Hey there, entrepreneur, and welcome to today's show. I am here with Stacy Tuschl, who started her own business at age 18 in her parents' backyard and turned that company into a multi-million-dollar business that she still runs today. She is a best-selling author, the founder of the Foot Traffic Formula, which aims to help small businesses around the world get more customers in the door, which who doesn't need that nowadays? She also has the Foot Traffic podcast, which has over 1 million downloads, has been frequented by guests like Susie Orman, is also in the top 30 of all marketing on iTunes, which I know firsthand is a pretty monumental feat. And as if those aren't enough kick-ass credentials, Stacy was also named 2019's Wisconsin Small Business Person of the Year by the U.S. Small Business Administration. Stacy, thank you so much for being here with me today.
Thanks for having me, Michelle. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I mean, you have a great journey. I mean, that's pretty impressive to start it in the backyard of your parents' house. So why don't you bring our listeners kind of through the past and up till today with your journey?
Yeah, for sure. My journey is a little different. I'm not like the lemonade stand story. This is like an actual business that we kept running. So I, right out of high school, started teaching dancers in my parents' backyard just for fun. I was in the high school dance team, and I thought, I'll do this for fun with middle schoolers. So we had 17 kids the first year, and like 3 years in, I had 100 kids getting dropped off to my parents' backyard. And nice. I mean, like the neighbors were like, what's happened? Like, what's going on? Like, I mean, who has like a party every Sunday with 100 girls, right? It was definitely unexpected. I fortunately grew up in a small business. So my parents and grandparents had an excavating company, which is construction. They dig basements for houses here in Wisconsin. So because of who my parents and grandparents were, they were like, we don't know anything about dance, but we think you might be able to charge and actually do this as a business. Yes. So I then incorporated back in 2005, rented a place that we would be out of the backyard, actually in a facility, and decided to do this. And I mean, in the beginning, I definitely had some hesitation of like, could I really make this a living? Like, this is just dance. And I wasn't even that good, I should say. Like, I started dancing when I was in high school. So that's really late for a dancer. There was all mindset. I mean, I just didn't believe anything that I could do any of this. Yeah. So thankfully I had my family giving me that confidence to say like, no, you already are doing it. Let's do this. Right. So I then decided to open up. And as soon as I started to switch gears, this isn't just a hobby, this is a business. That's when everything changed, because now I was looking at it from a different aspect. And what's funny is I might not have been like that naturally good of a dancer. I'm a really good business person because I've been watching my family do it since the day I was born. And that is how I exploded that first business. So I still own it. I do not operate in the business at all. I haven't done it since probably like 9 years ago. And then that's when I started teaching people, how did I build it? How did I scale it? How did I remove myself? And that's what I'm doing today in Foot Traffic.
Yeah. Which is, you make a very good point, because I come from theater and music, by the way. So I know what you're talking about.
There's so many of us that have like a background in performing, and it really makes sense because we're still performing just a different way.
Exactly. But you make a really good point around like, you don't have to be the best, but you do have to be the best at selling, which I think people often confuse the two, and they think I'm really good at my trade, so therefore I'll make the sale, when sometimes those are two completely different things, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a competitor who I looked at as like, they were like 30 plus years old at the time, their business. So I'm thinking, who am I? Like, she's been dancing since she was 3. She's got all these, her son was on So You Think You Can Dance. It was just like, how am I going to compete with this person? But honestly, like you said, the craft is one set of skills you have to have. You also have to know how to sell this business and make the sale.
Yeah. I mean, that's so valuable. And I think it's valuable for our listeners to hear, because I come in contact with too many founders who have some version of founder syndrome, right? Where they're just stuck and they're like, no, this is how it needs to be. And this is what I want my vision to be. And there's also no room for flexibility where it comes to that sale, right? That could bring you to the next level, right?
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. So tell us about, any adversity that you went up against. I mean, you described that mindset shift that you really needed, which I can imagine as somebody in their 20s, like that's a lot to handle. Right?
For sure. And then, it's funny because yes, I'm thinking negative thoughts, but at the same time, I'm also full of myself thinking I know everything.
Yeah, of course.
And I know how to do this, right? Like, this is going to be so easy, just going to charge and things are going to be amazing. No, actually charging threw everything off because now people expected something, right? But when I was doing it for free, no one really expected, they were grateful. All of a sudden I started charging and things were just a whole different ballgame. So, part of me thinks my success comes from being so naive and so young and just like, I'll do whatever I can. But yeah, there was definitely fear involved. We grew, in 2008, we were really growing and we built a building for ourselves. And in 2008 was when like the recession hit and everybody was closing their businesses. Literally our builders were shutting down as we were building the building. Our roof company was like halfway through the roof and they went out of business. Right. And nobody wanted to take over half of a roof because they couldn't guarantee somebody else's work. I mean, there was just like one thing after another. And even though success, like growing the business, growing the clientele was not really a weakness of ours, and we were doing really well with that, there was a million other things that came with growing so quickly, right? Hiring fast enough. I remember a time when I had to purposely slow us down just to make sure I could train teachers to have the same experience that they were having with me. And nobody wants to purposely slow down a business. No. Sometimes you have to. So yeah, there was just so many different things that popped up and learning lessons, like paying. I remember one time, we would walk around like local neighborhoods and we would put door hangers on doors. And somebody contacted me and said, hey, we know you do door hangers. We'll actually do this for $1,000 for you. I wired the money. Totally, like they're not a real company. $1,000 right now doesn't feel like a lot of money to me. But when I was 21,
it's a lot when you're starting. Yeah.
And then I had to go still do the stinking door hangers, like walking around. So just like things you just don't know until you go, oh, this is what people do, or this is how people are going to be. And now how do I behave differently and act differently? And how do I show up? And it's just, you just don't know what you don't know until you go through it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's one reason why I'm always preaching it's a marathon, not a sprint, right? Because I agree with you. The operations person to me is like, no, if you're going to do it right. Yeah. Right. If you are going to go to the trouble, I guess, of slowing down hiring, at least have it be beneficial for the process. Right.
And sometimes you have to slow down to speed up. And that was one of those situations, right? Because if I kept going as fast as we were and allowing people to come in and not have a great experience, that would have tanked my reputation. Yeah. Instead, what they heard was, oh, they're sold out. It almost made
different.
It
it's better. Scarcity.
We're on a wait list and I was training people and then we opened that wait list and they had a great experience and then continued to refer. So looking back, that was probably one of the most pivotal moments that I didn't realize I actually did in the correct way. Whereas it could have flopped. It could have gone the opposite direction.
Yeah, no, I mean, and I think that what you just described right there is where a lot of fear is wrapped up for entrepreneurs, right? Can you tell me a little bit about that part? Because I know you work with people around scaling and really nailing down their processes, but that fear, I can't even tell you how many people that have come to me with exactly that.
Yeah. And some people don't identify with being fearful, but when I say things like, do you trust other people to make decisions without you on your behalf? It's like, oh, well, no. They wouldn't be able to do that. Like, okay, well, there is some fear coming up in some of these situations, right? We think no one can do it like us, or no, the client needs me, or no, don't take that email. I should be the one to respond to that one. Or this is an angry client. Let me jump in. And in the beginning, it's great for you to do it to set up the system. But after that, there is no reason that somebody shouldn't be able to perform that system the way you've done it. Right. So you have the angry client and you did something wrong, or they just expected something and you didn't set expectations clear enough. Right. But now, for next time, okay, let's change this. And here's what we're going to do when this happens. Here's how we're going to fix it. Here's how we're going to go above and beyond. The problem is people act so quickly in the moment, and then they don't write it down or do anything about it. They just fix it. They put the Band-Aid on, they move on. Yep. And then all of a sudden it happens again. And it's like they're on this hamster wheel, right? Of constantly fixing it. But how many times are you fixing the same problem you've already fixed?
Yes. Right? Yes. I've seen that so many times. Thank you.
I mean, it really is. And I mean, so that's one way of having fear, right? Another fear is not putting yourself out there enough, hiding behind tasks that are making you feel like you're doing something, but if you did the real thing that you should be working on, it could blow up your business.
Right.
And what are you afraid of if business blows up? Or what will that look like for you, right? Can you sustain it? Can you keep the momentum you've got going? I mean, there's just so many different ways it shows up every day. And you've got to catch it. You've got to listen and watch for like what's popping up and understand why and what's really the problem. So I had a problem where, again, I have this like growing too fast problem, which nobody feels bad for me for, but
but it's a thing. It's a thing.
It's a thing. Yeah. Holy cow. I swear it's a thing. So I was like sabotaging one of our programs because I kept saying, we can't fulfill. We do not have the manpower. We should not be selling this program. And I'm like, whoa, I'm actually turning away money. Yeah. And when I had to sit down and work through it, I realized I wasn't confident in the delivery. So then again, I paused. I got us more. I'm like, what else can I do? How can I blow them away? What can I add? And then when I felt good, it was like, okay, open the doors.
Yeah. When you know, on something like that. I had a very similar experience when this podcast launched and I wanted to like crawl into a hole because we got hammered. And I think, like you said, like that fear of like, oh man, now I have to perform, or, oh man, like now be careful what you wish for.
Right. Now they expect you to show up. Now they expect to be as good as it was last week. And you keep outdoing yourself and all of the things.
Yeah. And I think people think also with scaling, like that they do exactly what you just said. Like they don't understand that they have to evolve. A lot of people will talk to me a lot about the processes that they have to write down, which thank you for saying, write the process down, because so many people come to me when they're a teenager and they have to now go back to the processes. But, a lot of people get scared around that part right there emotionally. And what you just described is not tactical. Like that's like every single trigger you can imagine shows up in scaling, right? Yeah.
And here's the thing, when people aren't comfortable scaling because they don't think they have the right people or the right processes or the right, whatever this is. A lot of times we externally blame, well, they wouldn't be ready for it, or they couldn't do that. But really everything comes back to the CEO. Yes. I mean, if they're not ready, you're the one training them, or you're the one training the trainer who's training them. Yes. So what can you do to show up and lead better, right? If my EA is not performing at the level that I need her to be, how could I be supporting her better? What systems could I have created for her to understand, or what policies could I put in place for her to realize, don't schedule me on a Friday, right? Like we blame other people, but a lot of times you got to turn it around and say, how could I have, like, what could I have done to make that problem not have happened?
Yes.
9 times out of 10, like 9.9 times out of 10, there is something you could have done.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think to your earlier point, slowing down long enough to do the postmortem on all of these things, which again, like the definition of insanity. So many people just do it. And I do it myself. We've all done it at some point, doing the same thing, expecting different results. Like next time the angry client is going to be handled in a much better way. Like, but you forget when you're going through these things, you forget unless you take the time to go through and work it out and actually understand your process.
I was just working with a client and she just did a product launch a few months ago. It did not go well. She says to me, I'm going to do it again coming up here in 2 weeks. I'm like, okay, what changes have you made? I didn't make any changes. I'm like, listen,
what does she think?
It didn't go well.
Yeah.
We're not going to rinse and repeat the same thing that didn't go well.
No.
You've got to fix a lot of this stuff to figure out why is this not working, right?
Yes.
So we just have to be really careful because again, we blame other things. No, it was Facebook ads. No, it was just this situation. No, this just happened. It's going to work this time. Is it?
Right.
Like you don't always know that.
No. And I mean, there's always going to be that kind of percentage of chance, right?
Yes.
On some level, but I've always been a big fan of like, why not kind of stack the deck as much as you can in your favor? And that includes, to your point, you. And I think the best leaders I know, and you can probably agree, are the most self-aware people I know as well.
Yes.
It's such an important trait. It's such an important trait. And then can you describe for me as well, the difference between being busy and productive? You touched on it earlier when you said like the tasks that everyone does that aren't moving your business forward.
Yeah. So this is one that I have studied because I have struggled with it. Right. Yeah. And I think it's a big thing because you have to up level as the CEO. So things that used to be productive for you can turn into busy work at some point.
Yep.
Right. So you have to keep reassessing, like you had said, self-awareness, right?
Yep.
You have to keep reassessing and evaluating your calendar every 90 days, looking at, okay, well, that's what worked for me last month, right? Or last quarter, but where am I going? And what do I need to start to say no to? Right. So there was a time that I was on every single daily huddle with the entire team. And at some point I had to say, you know what? I'm going to show up twice a week to those daily huddles. I don't need to be on 5 of them. Right.
Right.
You know how to run these without me. So again, I don't know what that's going to look like 90 days from now or 6 months from now, but I do know that my calendar is constantly up leveling. Right.
Yeah.
And we fall in these bad habits. We think, oh no, I've always done it this way, or oh, they need me to do this. Somebody else can start to do some of these things. So I love to do calendar audits. So every 90 days.
Me too. I do it. I love it. It makes me happy. It makes me happy to do it.
Well, it's such an eye opener.
Yeah.
In the moment, you know, if you're just doing something and you are doing busy work, you don't really realize you're doing it. When you have to write it down, when you have to actually say, is this busy work or not? Right.
Yeah.
All of a sudden you're like, I probably could have let somebody delegate that. Probably shouldn't, right? Have done that. Right. So I do think it's really important to do that at least 90 days for you and key players on your team, really making sure everybody is self-aware.
Yeah. And making sure that they're in alignment with where you're going. Yeah. I think so many times we get things put on our calendar that's not in alignment with the vision that we have for those 90 days or the place that we want to take our company or even our families, for goodness sakes. Like, I think that's a great topic. I would love to hear your 2 cents on too, because I know you're like me, you have 2 little ones. And that is a challenge, correct?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and people always ask me like, do you have mom guilt? How do you feel about doing this and that? And here's the thing, you have to figure out what you want your life to look like. You have to figure out what success feels like and looks like for you. So no, do not look at my travel schedule. Do not look at when I work or when I don't work and then think you have to model it.
Right.
And it's so funny. I had this client, I work pretty much between like 9 and 3:15ish. And my client copied it. And then she said, it took me a year to realize you work those hours because that's when your kids go to school. And she's like, my kids aren't in school.
Yeah, you can work whenever you want.
Right. And she's copying my schedule. And I'm like, this is why you can understand what I'm doing and model it to make it work for you, but you have to make it work for yourself. And that's the biggest thing. So if she's got little ones who aren't even in school, no, don't copy that schedule. Figure out what you want it to look like. And for some people, that's working 4 days a week. For some people, it is working 5 days, 6 days, you name it. For me personally, I need weeknights and weekends off. Like I shut down. I don't do any work unless like something urgent pops up, but that is rare. If I don't have that time to myself, I just don't feel good. You know, like it's good to eat like chocolate cake, but you just don't feel that great after you eat it.
Especially if you're eating it every day and doing it for the long term, right? I mean,
absolutely.
There's definitely a season for hustle. Don't get me wrong. I was speaking about this with another guest the other day, and there's a season, but when it becomes a best practice, you know, that's when it's destructive almost to yourself. So bravo.
Here's the thing. When I started my business, was I taking off every night and every weekend? No, absolutely not. Right. But it is dangerous to not understand when the time has come.
Yes.
People are not good at going, it's time. They think, no, we could be making this much. We could be doing another million. We could be doing that will never stop. You have to start to say, when do I shut off? And I do believe, even though I did work like a crazy person back in the day, I do believe looking at it now, there's no way I was that productive. There's no way working from 9 until midnight. No. Squeezing in a couple more hours was this game changer because then I would have to sleep in a little bit or I'd have, I just think I had some bad strategies that I thought were working that secretly, I don't think they worked.
Yeah. I mean, it has to come out. Like you just said, if you work late, it's going to have to be compensated somewhere, or it's going to catch up to you and be compensated all at once, which I've had that happen to me a couple of times. Cause I'm like you, like I like to work too. And I like my work, but like you, I'm just at that point too, where I'm like, nights and weekends my brain needs to shut off or else I'm not productive, and that serves nobody.
Well, and a lot of times I'll have people say, I just don't really know what else to do. So I go back to work. Right. So whether they're empty nester or their kids are gone or whatever that looks like, they don't have kids at all.
Right.
They're like, well, they were gone. So I just did it. find something else that you can recharge with, right? You might have to find a hobby, but you need to find something, even if it's going for a walk, reading a book, whatever it is, you have to turn off at some point. I was with Todd Herman, and he said to me, because I am a go person, even though I take off weekends and weeknights, I don't take good enough breaks. And he said to me, you need an off season. You don't have an off season. He's like, Modern Family, they shoot for 3 months and then they don't shoot the rest of the year. And he's like, you're shooting all year long. I'm like, you're right. I am. And I'm definitely really intentional about how can I fix that right now.
Good. And that plays into the seasonality of your business too, right? And understanding, I think oftentimes people that I speak to haven't been in it long enough to understand that kind of ebb and flow of how they can take a break. And there, again, that fear pops up. Like if I take a break, then, everything will fall to pieces. So, I mean, how do you kind of recommend somebody goes about busting through those fears or, understanding and walking into that point of self-confidence that they can release a little bit?
Yeah. I think number one for me is seeing it's possible, right? So when I surround myself with somebody who is taking off and still crushing it, I think, well, then I can do it too, right? If I know somebody who works 3 days a week and has a multi-million-dollar business, that makes me feel it's possible.
Right.
If I am surrounded by hustlers, I'm thinking this is normal. Everybody's doing it. I must have to do this too. So then I get stuck in that feeling of that's not possible. So I think there is all of this is possible. Find the room that people are doing what you want to do in whatever capacity that looks like. Right. And whether that's money, whether that's time freedom, whatever that looks like, get in that room so you see it and believe it.
Yes.
That will help.
That's great.
Another thing is once you see it, you've got to keep taking the actions of those people, right? Like success leaves clues. This is not that hard.
Yes.
I promise you.
Agreed.
It's not that hard. I mean, you can look at anybody that you're admiring and go, what are they doing? Let me break down how they are doing this. Not that you are going to copy, right? We're not here to clone anybody, but you can absolutely study and learn by what they are doing and how they are doing it and say, how can I do this for me? What does this look like in my business? Right. So I think that's, find that room, find the people that are doing it, and then find the actions they're taking, and then figure out how you can mold those into what feels good for you and excites you and lights you up.
Yeah. And I mean, in order to do what you just said, you have to get real honest with yourself, folks. Like you have to really audit everything. Like never mind just your calendar. You really like, there's been times that I've had to audit relationships, audit everything around me because that vision of what I wanted my life and my family's life to look like may not have aligned with a lot of people, and that's okay. Right.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Beautiful. So let's talk about how you run your business today. Like you said, you can shut it off. You can walk away. And I know because I followed you on Instagram today and somebody pinged me right away. And I was like, that is brilliant because so your team member are on it. So talk about kind of some of the helpful systems and processes that you put in place.
Yeah, for sure. So first realizing that I'm not the only person that can help. Right? That I'm not the only person that can serve. So I think that's been really, really helpful for me. But basically my schedule does look Monday through Friday. I recently just got rid of Tuesday and Friday appointments. So clearing those, and not that I'm not working those days, but I get to wake up and decide what are my big priorities. I mean, I, as a leader, have a lot of team meetings and I can go from meeting to podcast to coaching call and then go, when am I working on my business? Exactly. It's just not even possible. So by having my Tuesdays and Fridays wiped clear, I'm now able to say, what are the big things I need to do that they need from me? Right. So that's kind of what my schedule looks like. I'm a big believer in getting help and building a team and really pouring into your team, training them, getting them up and running so that they like knowing that somebody messaged you today. Yeah. I feel confident they gave great customer experience, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Good. Glad to hear that. So if you're ever second guessing or doubting, you're kind of doubting yourself. You're doubting that somebody, right? That you've got to step up and do
it.
Yes. Yeah. And not that I'm perfect and not that somebody couldn't have messed up in a DM or email or wherever you message, but I feel confident enough that the people working for me are in alignment with my values to know that they're going to treat you with respect and kindness.
Yeah. Yeah. And The question that I get asked a lot is like, there's those, I don't know what other phrase to use, but a Trojan horse, right? Somebody comes in, they seem like they're very well aligned with your values, and then they're not. So have you dealt with that? And how can you tell our folks kind of a little bit about that as well?
Well, yeah. So when I'm interviewing people, they may know my values because I have it on my website, but most people don't.
Yeah.
So when they're coming in, I'm evaluating them on how they're showing me my values before I even tell them what they are. Right. Yeah. So I don't want you to see my values and then perform. I want you to be you, and my values are your values, and they're coming through. Right. So yeah, I mean, when we're in the interview process, the first time we ever hire somebody and bring them on, we actually will tell them what values we witnessed and why they got the job and what we saw in them. Yeah. So
it's really great.
It's harder for us to get faked out because they don't know what winning looks like in that interview. Yeah. But when I go, here's what we gave you in a sample project, and I left this out on purpose, and you could have emailed to ask, but you just Googled and you got the answer. That was being resourceful, right? Yeah. So that's the kind of stuff that people they would think, oh, she forgot the address, I'm just going to email her and get the address, right? But you could Google and get the address. And I'm looking for somebody to Google or YouTube or whatever and be resourceful. So I think you've got to give people an opportunity to show you who they are without saying, hey, integrity is important. How do you feel integrity is important to you? And they're like, oh, it's very important.
Who's going to answer that and be like, well, it's not.
Right. Integrity. I don't ask about integrity. Integrity is like, I was 2 minutes late to our phone call. I do not like being late. When I say I'm going to come at a certain time, I'm coming at a certain time. Right. When somebody shows up to an interview, integrity is, were you here at 3:00 when you scheduled the interview? Yeah. Right. So when they come, I mean, I would have doxed myself right there. If you were me hire, I'm like, oh, she's 2 minutes late. Like, this is not acceptable. Right. So that's the kind of stuff I'm looking at without asking about how important is integrity to you. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you have to kind of dig. And I think that's where people don't understand. Like, you have to give real world situations, like you just said. And that's a very great example of somebody going out and finding the answer, which is huge nowadays. I feel like I find a lot of people who complain about people who don't do that. But I love the way that you just positioned kind of looking at integrity and looking for those values. Cause you're right. It's not just tell us the top 5 ways that you can practice integrity. Like, that's anybody could answer that, but not the right people.
Yeah. And we have things in our interview process too, to say, here's a sample project. We might say, we want this back by Friday at 10, or we might say, when can you get it back to us by? And they pick Thursday at 3. Yeah. And then all of a sudden we're going, did they do it Thursday by 3? If they did it Thursday by 5, this is not good for integrity.
No. And also setting their own boundaries, understanding how to self-manage, like all of those things, right? That especially in the work that you're doing, you have to launch things, and you have to have things the way that you want them. So bravo for, sticking to all of that. Is there anything else that you want to talk about in regards to kind of productivity and resourcefulness and stuff like that? Because you're a wealth of knowledge when it comes to all of those realms.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing is, people get excited about making money and scaling, and they don't necessarily get excited about numbers.
Thank you.
And systems. Like, those are boring. But you know what's not boring? When knowing your numbers and having systems in place make you a lot of money, right?
Yes.
And that's what I want people to understand is the people that are truly successful and scaling at rapid speed, they've got systems and they know their numbers. Now, if you're like, no, I know somebody who's scaling and they don't have systems. Okay, great. Their life is a nightmare. Like, I can't even imagine.
And it won't
how
last.
many times
it's not sustainable.
And they're getting interrupted, and they might have wealth, but they do not have time wealth. Yes. And that is a big difference. Exactly. So I really just get everybody on board of create systems, and you can create systems even as somebody, down to us. I was a solopreneur before I ever had a team. Yeah. And even as a solopreneur, I was making systems for myself to rinse and repeat. Yeah. And then when I hired people, I just went, here you go.
Exactly. It's easy that way. And that way, people don't understand that that's what makes scaling easy. Is when you have that self-discipline to put yourself in a process. Yeah. And then, like you said, you can just hand it off to somebody and say, put your own spin on it. But here's my expectation, and it should be clear because I've lived it.
Yeah. And then one of the big things that we do is everybody on the team has KPIs, like key performance indicators. Yeah. So on a weekly basis, they're getting me an end of week report And I see those numbers and I get an instant pulse on how is the business doing.
Right.
And I'm using that data to really put them in their next direction for next week, right? I'm going, whoa, Bella, what happened on social media last week? You killed it. Fill me in. Like, what did we do?
Yeah.
And then she says, oh, I did an extra reel, or I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to get you another reel because that seemed to work. Right. Or, whoa, why did our podcast numbers go down? And like, well, you had one less episode. Okay. I didn't realize how much that was going to take that podcast down. So I'm using my numbers with my systems to really truly scale my business. And that's when you start to get predictable. Yes. And let me tell you, I know predictable doesn't sound fun sometimes, but man, when you can predict, I know
I think it's great.
You like predictability if you know what feast and famine feels like, right? Yes. Predictability is where you start to really see what the future holds, what summer's going to look like, and so on.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, what you said around the teams and everything else, being in contact with them, but you're not micromanaging, which I think people get those kind of things confused too. You're clear on your expectations. You're asking for a report weekly, which I found like I'm from corporate and that was a normal thing. Like KPIs are a normal thing and, weekly stand-ups and all those things.
Not in small business world.
Not in small business world. And it makes such a big difference that when you do that in a small business, it's amazing. I see entrepreneurs who own like a Main Street shop doing stand-ups with their employees every week. Like it's such a huge
absolutely
team building activity too.
Yeah. So good. No, it's one of those things and here's the thing. I've been a business owner since I was 18. I didn't go to corporate. I didn't do any of that stuff. Right. So I had to learn, oh, whoa, people do this. And when I started implementing that, the businesses started to take off. Yes. So I will tell you, if you're not doing it and maybe you're okay with the business, or you're maybe just not happy with it, implementing this will change it big time.
Yeah, it will. I mean, any system and process will take, folks, but these in particular, like these things like weekly stand-ups, understanding your numbers. I watched a video that you did about being a CEO and not knowing your numbers and
like complaining that you're just not good at math.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I've heard that so many times, but I'm with you. I think it's empowering. Like I want to know my numbers. Like I'm a geek for my numbers.
Yeah.
So bravo for putting that out there. All right. Any last bits that you want to leave our audience with? You've given us so much value.
I really think like the more you can just dial this in, the better off you'll be. If you do not have KPIs, oh my goodness, like that alone will change so much. And KPIs that mean something. I've seen people that have KPIs and you're like, if that number gets bigger, does it actually grow the business or does it not? Yes. I think a lot of times we put very fluffy metrics down and you've got to find the real metrics that actually do something. I was just working with one of our businesses and I was going over the KPIs and they were very confused of like, I don't know what I do. And I just kept saying, how do you move the needle in our business? What are you at? And they're like, well, this does this. I'm like, okay, put that down. Okay, does that do it? Yeah. Put it here. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I have one guest on once that had joy as a KPI on her thing. And I was like, that's lovely. I'm like, I actually really like that, but that's not the same KPIs that I have in my brain when I'm talking about like the numbers.
Well, and hard numbers that actually mean something. Now, let's say that it was you, the CEO, that said joy or something, and you really wanted to measure your energy or the way you were feeling or light up. Sure. But my employee, not so much, right? Like, it doesn't tell me if business was great or not last week.
Right. Exactly. And I think to your point, it allows you to see the trends and that's when it really gets fun.
Absolutely. Looking at numbers is fun when you're winning, but you only get to start to win by understanding the numbers and fixing them.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Everyone needs to go find you. So can you please tell people where they can do just that? Because I know you have some great programs and wonderful things in your podcast and everything.
Thank you. Yeah. So the podcast is Foot Traffic. So that's a big one. I would definitely go check out that. We're actually, I know you said 1 million and we have it in our bio, which made me go, we need to update that. Yeah. We're hitting 2 million, I think this week or next week. So we're just like, it's growing so fast. So the Foot Traffic podcast. Otherwise, my favorite place is Instagram at Stacy Tuschl. Come find me. If you DM me Michelle, but type in like KPI or something and I'll gift you. I have like a KPI spreadsheet that we use and you can see some actual real KPIs of not vanity, but like what would move the needle. And I'll send that over to you. And it's not an opt-in or anything.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. I liked how you were doing that too. I saw a couple things like that when you were saying, drop me this word. And
those for us,
so great.
I just feel like sometimes, people put out freebies and you're giving your email and they're just like, okay. And for us, we just kind of got rid of the email opt-in and really gave things people actually want. And it gets people to have conversations and really serve them.
Yeah. And it, who needs the serving more that way than
absolutely
a blanket email, which is brilliant.
Or what excites them. Yeah,
exactly. Sure.
Well,
this has been lovely. And I'm with you on all the things you're saying. So thank you for driving those home. And we'll be sure to put all of your links and everything in the notes. And thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thanks, Michelle.